This is Rob JH1 and Josh Spodek. We're coming to you again for another session of isolation. Although we're not in isolation, partial isolation, I would say, but not in complete isolation. Say the same thing, Josh?
Yeah, getting more and more used to it.
Yep. More
I don't know if
used
we're
to
10 or 11 or 12. I think we're 11 now.
Yeah, I've got to look, because I know we did a broadcast about a week ago that I haven't posted, but that will be coming soon. As soon as I get my internet connection working up and running. I should be returning to the city, I think tomorrow. So I can't wait to see what has changed, what has transpired, or what remains the same. But
Yeah,
hey.
we had a big storm.
Yep.
I guess you had it too.
Yes, I did. In the middle of the hurricane, although we weren't, our lights were off for about, I think, 24 hours. Then they came back on. But
It's funny. I was just walking. There was an intersection I was walking through, and the lights were out. I wonder if that was from the storm, but that was a while ago. I think.
Well, I was told that the lights were out in Upper Manhattan, the Upper West Side.
This was Fifth Avenue and maybe 12th Street.
Okay.
I was like crossing the street and just looking at the traffic, not the light. And then I realized that the traffic, like the cars were acting really weird.
Yep.
Because they were taking turns going through the intersection with no lights on.
Uh-huh. Okay. So what's been going on with you? Let's
see. Did I tell about the cops, what I was doing with them from the Joe Rogan and Jocko Willink podcast that I listened to?
Yep.
So yesterday was I've been checking the Twitter feed of the 6th Precinct regularly. And finally they posted that they had it's called Build the Block, their community outreach thing. And I went, if the last stage was I'd gone to the 6th Precinct and there was a guy out front and he said, don't know anything about, we've never done any ride-alongs, I don't know anything about it. And I said, can I go inside? And he said, come to this community thing. So they're really friendly at the community thing.
Right.
And oh man, and it's fun. Fun isn't the word, illuminating to hear the cop side of the protests. And they were like, they didn't use the word, they were saying protest, but one of them was telling me about his experience and getting pelted with rocks and things like that. And then he thought he was looking forward to reading the next day in the newspaper what happened. And he said the description in the paper was nothing like his experience. And I don't know, I wasn't there either way, but I was really interested in hearing I've not seen a cop interviewed. I don't think I've seen the cop's presentation of it. And frankly, I think I've seen a lot of what appears very much cops overreacting. And I've certainly seen a lot of people baiting cops. But I haven't seen it. And so I wanted to go and so it was cool to talk to them. And, it definitely feels part of a community that I've not part of my, it's part of my community.
Right.
And I haven't really connected with them. And it felt really good. Not much happened. They were just kind of saying, what they normally do at these things is talk about crime rates and what are the latest things going on. But the last one that they had was in January. So they said, we're not going to update you on what happened since the last one because everything has changed.
Right.
And it's kind of interesting to hear my neighbors talking about what their issues are. And so anyway, 6th Precinct has 4 sections, and I'm in the one that I went to was for section C, Charlie, and I'm in section D. So August 20th is when the next one is when the one is for my thing. And they said there's a process that you can go through to do a ride along. They haven't done it in a long time, so it might be different.
Right.
And I said I expect it'll take some time. And they said, we don't really know how many people can go in the police cars because of COVID. And but I'm looking forward to it.
Right. Okay. So when you were talking, you said that you had never heard of the police side of the story. A couple of things. When you say side of the story, side of what story? And then you said, I think I heard you say that the police are a bit overreacting. And if you did say that, overreacting about what? So what side of the story and what are they overreacting about?
Well, now that you mention it, what I'm thinking about, the videos that I've seen have been the ones that have been the most viral because I'm not spending a lot of time searching them out. And so the ones that are the most viral seem to be ones where it's like plainclothes cops get out of a van, put someone in the van. You don't even know if they're cops. And then things like pushing down an old man, things like that. So I guess it's not having heard their side. I guess in the articles that I see, they tend to be interviewing protesters.
Mhm.
So they're not interviewing rioters. I mean, I think the journalists are probably seeking out people who are generally peaceful. I'm not sure. Like they're probably not interviewing people who are going down and just breaking windows, although it's possible that they're the same people. I'm not sure. This is what I want to find out.
Mhm.
But I don't think that they've gone up. I don't think when you see journalists interacting with cops, they're generally showing the cops aren't treating us like free, independent, fourth estate members of the fourth estate.
Mhm.
They're not showing the cases where cops are going out of the way to make sure that the fourth estate can do what they want to do.
Right.
Maybe that's because they're not. Maybe it's because they're not showing it because it's not going to get as many clicks.
Right.
I'm not sure, but I certainly haven't seen. Certainly listen to Jocko and Joe Rogan. They are. Well, Jocko talks about his time in Afghanistan and how when Petraeus got there, he said, we can't do this show up in a huge show of force. We got to do hearts and minds and meet people. And he was saying we should do more. That's where this is coming from, doing more ride-alongs and meeting people.
Right.
Also in my neighborhood, I rarely see cops just walking a beat. I don't think I have. They're always behind cars, behind, I mean, it's summer right now, so they're usually driving around with the windows closed. I can't really talk to them.
Mhm.
And when they do stuff, it's when I do see them on the street, they tend to be in large groups, and they feel maybe if I walked up and started talking to them, then they don't look approachable. Maybe they are, and that's just me. I don't know. Did that answer your question?
I guess somewhat, but then something that you said I thought was, well, you said a lot there.
Sorry.
And I'm going to try to like break it down as much as I can remember. One of the things that you just said, that when you do see them, they're in large groups and they don't seem approachable. I've seen them in large groups and I have approached them. And interestingly enough, I've approached them to say, thank you for your service. You guys be safe. And I appreciate all that you do. When I first approached them, the look on their faces, it's like, as if though they're saying, here we go again. What is this guy gonna say? We've got to stand here and we've got to take it. So there's a cold expression that once I say, why are you, be safe, thank you for your service, the ones who weren't listening, just like, okay, here comes this guy, they turn around and they go, I'm sorry, what did you say? So I repeat it. And then there's a smile on all their faces collectively. So we really appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, yeah, be safe. So I found myself, before I came here to Jersey, doing that more often as I walked around the city. And at one point, I was walking around and I was like hungry and I saw some police officers inside of a restaurant. And I went inside and I said, you guys getting this? Again, I got the same look with, okay, here we go again. Mm-hmm. And it's like, yes. I was like, oh, I'll pay for it. Mm-hmm. And it was like a double look. It's like, but we're getting all this. And I guess we're getting it for some of their buddies. I'm like, yeah, I'll pay for it. I'm like, I appreciate your services. I appreciate what you do. Please be safe. And there was this one female cop. She looked at me almost with tears in her eyes. And she said, I really appreciate that. So I paid for it. And then she was with another cop, a black cop. And he comes up. He was like, what people don't understand is that there are bad cops out there. But all of us aren't bad. And to me, that said a lot. Because to just look at all the police officers and say that they're bad cops when they're not, it says something about our society, because now it seems we want to defund the police because of the actions of a few. But just imagine if we were to start taking away, I want to say defund human rights, but start taking away things that people are doing because of the actions of a few. Case in point, blacks. I mean, there seems to be a problem. I can say this because I am black. It's just in case our viewers don't realize it. And no, it's not coming off. Because I get a lot of that also when they hear what I'm saying, is that we have to look at the numbers and we have to have an honest conversation and we have to be truthful. there is an issue of violence in the Black community. Now, we can say that it's in every community. I agree. But the proportionate amount within the Black community is just, it's too large. Blacks make up 12% of the population. Of that amount, how many of that amount are following the law, not following the law, breaking the law? Probably 2%, 3%. But in any event, it's still, that number is too great, because when it does happen, it's plastered all over the screen. And it's not just police and the Blacks that are having the issue, but those are the ones that are plastered all over because it gets attention. People want to see, people will say, hey, you see, there's racism. But if there is racism, why? If you know, or if you thought that a group of people were after you, why would you go out and make yourself so available? Or why would you do things that you know is going to get the attention of people that are going to say, hey, you did this? Okay? So I mean, these are the questions that people are afraid to ask. We want to have the conversation. We say, oh, we got to discuss this, but are we having a conversation, or are we just listening to people talk, whereas we want other people to just listen? Look at all the situations whereby there was Black on Black and police violence against Blacks. So they say, and when you look at it a little more in depth. It's like, well, did this actually happen? Michael Brown, the police officer, got off because they were saying, oh, you know, he said, hands up, don't shoot. Turns out that wasn't said at all. Freddie Gray, oh, the police beat him up, they did this. Turns out that didn't happen. And the investigation was done by, under the president, who was a Black president with 2 Black attorney generals. But no one is aware that that information that was said was false. But we still hear that narrative, hands up, don't shoot. Look at what they did to Freddie Gray. And there was Castile Rice, was in a park and he was shot. Okay, the police actually thought that he had a gun. But the narrative that is formed is these are racist police officers and they killed these Blacks. I don't believe that. The one just recently happened. What was the guy's name? George Floyd, and including Eric Garner. But let's go back to George Floyd. When we look at that situation, okay, he was a racist cop and he killed this guy. Now, from looking at the tape, what happened, clearly this guy was just full of power. He should have removed his knee. But to say he was a racist police officer, that these police officers were out and about looking to cause harm to a Black person, that is a narrative that has been formed. Now, there's another tape that has come out. And they're saying, George Floyd wasn't the compliant person that they say that he was. He was resisting arrest. Now, that does not negate the fact that the police officer should not have had his knee on the man's neck. But to say it was a racist act, and then define all police officers as racist, when a majority of the police force right now, especially in New York and in California, consists of Black and brown people. So when you point that out, people will say, oh, well, it's institutional racism. It's systemic. It's been grown. So it goes back to, what type of conversation are we having? Are we just having the conversation that, you know, these guys are racist and that's it? Or are we having a meaningful conversation? So when you say you walk out and you see the police officers, I mean, your experience of when you're walking out is probably different from that of a Black person, because they're probably thinking that, oh my, you know, they're coming after me. Whereas you're looking at that, you know, these are the people in my neighborhood, my community rather, and do I know them? You know, when you think of police officers, how do you think of them? Do you think of people who are there to protect and to serve, or people who are being a nuisance, people who need to be defunded because there are too many that are out there?
Yeah, you said a lot in this. The last couple questions, I don't look at cops as benign. I think I did when I was a kid, but I think things have changed. I'm kind of scared of them. I'm approaching them now in a context where it's in front of the police station. I'm friendly. I'm going to an event that they're holding, but I wouldn't ask a cop for directions. I'd be a little nervous of interacting with them because of the power that they have.
Right.
I'm not really afraid of them sticking their knee on my neck. Mm-hmm. But here, my nephew had It was something where he could go to the cop station out in Queens. And I thought there, like one of the things they could do was go into a jail cell. And I thought to myself, I would not step in a jail cell. I know that if people saw me go in, they could say, you know, obviously he's not supposed to be in jail. He wasn't put in jail from being arrested and so forth. But once I'm in there, I'm at their mercy to get back out again. And I've seen too many cases, I guess because working with the, I tried to volunteer with Project Innocence. Project Innocence is constantly getting these, basically men. I mean, it's like 1 out of 1,000 is a woman, or 1 out of 100, a very small percentage are women. And they're put in jail for, it's unconscionable. I mean, someone will be in jail for 30 years, 10 of which was after the DNA evidence was completely, you know, maybe there wasn't DNA evidence back when the guy was convicted. And then at some point they bring in this evidence and it's incontrovertible. There's no chance that this guy did it. And they still take 10 years to let him out.
Yep.
So I was thinking, as a man, I wouldn't go into a jail cell, no matter what. I don't care, like if there's a TV crew saying like, this guy's innocent. I don't need some Kafka situation where they come out and they say, well, let's just make sure. We don't want to let him out. Right. Maybe he's guilty of something.
Right. And Jeff, let me just intervene. Use Project Innocence. And of that number of men that are there, what percentage is Black? What percentage is white?
There, I'm not sure. It's it's also not the number of. It's not just people who are convicted. It's people who are convicted and have some sort of DNA evidence, or they have their certain criteria for why they're going to work on a case. And so I couldn't tell you what the numbers are there. I mean, I know there's plenty of white guys because I remember seeing different colors, but I haven't checked. I'm sure they have the stats.
I looked at stats like that, and a majority are Black, convicted. Either they did the crime, but the sentencing is like excessive, or they did not do it, but an eyewitness said that they did. But now, like you said, you have DNA that you can go in and you can use it. And there are a large amount of Black men that are in jail right now, waiting for these DNA samples or DNA testings to be sampled so they can, get out of prison. But, someone is dragging their feet and, not moving on. But I gotta say, thanks to
prosecutors are also pushing.
Yeah, true. But also just to add in, as I, just love to do, that thanks to our current president, this thing is being pushed. And he is definitely taking a look at it and saying that, hey, there are Blacks, especially men, in jail for crimes that they didn't commit, or sentencings that are just completely excessive. So, and that I think has definitely affected the Black community in getting a lot of these men out of jail.
So going back to the cops, I feel like there are open questions you had asked about police.
Yes.
Can you remind me what, because there was something in my head that I was like, Rob had a question to answer.
I said, how do you feel when you see the police officers, or what are your thoughts about the police?
Yeah, I guess when I see police lately, I just want to go up to them and ask them, why aren't you wearing masks? But I know that if I do that, that's what, like, I'm sure there's a bunch of people, and that's why you're getting like, what's it going to be this time?
Right.
And I don't want to go up and ask them directly, because I'm sure they get that a lot. And I don't want to be just an annoying person.
Right.
And I don't want to go up and make small talk and try to like get around to it. And then, because that feels like, what's the point in that either? So I just go about my business and don't really think too much about it.
I think the small talk would definitely work, because then you're getting to know, okay, this is the guy who's in my community, serving my community, and do a little small talk, and then just say, hey, by the way, what are your thoughts on wearing a mask? Of course, you'll have a mask on when you're talking to him.
Yeah. Now that you're saying that, you having shared what you did, I hadn't thought of doing that. I mean, I do that with veterans more now. Just to say, I appreciate your service.
Right. But police officers,
they gave me the cards, so now I can connect with them.
Right, because you can easily sometimes identify who the police officer is because they have on the uniform. The cops that I have approached, now that I'm thinking about it, a lot of them, they had on the mask, because before I left the city, I went to a protest. And let me think. Yeah, they either had the mask covering their face or it was up under their chin. And I guess the reason why they didn't have it on is because they were in a group of police officers. And I've heard, I don't know how true it is if you're in the same group all the time, the risk could be minimal. But then too, you don't know where that person has been. So, but yeah, I've seen a combination of cops wearing the mask and them not wearing the mask. That just leads into another conversation. Why hasn't the police force now been hit heavily with COVID-19?
Or has it?
Well, we haven't heard about it. And I think if it would.
Well, not having heard about it doesn't mean that it hasn't happened.
Oh, but we would definitely hear about it in this day and age, with everyone trying to push that, oh, this person got it, that person got it. But we haven't heard anything. I've got to look into that.
I'd be curious what you find. I might look into it too. I remembered what was on my mind. You were talking about conversation about race. And I don't know if, I've not heard the following said that, okay, if someone calls a person of color racist, I don't think that sticks. I mean, it might stick, but I don't think it really sticks that much. I don't think like a Hispanic person is worried about being called racist. And I think a lot of people would say, well, you can't be racist against white. But I certainly hear when I talk to Asians, Hispanics, Blacks, when we're friends, I mean, friendly talking, people will say things that would probably be racist if it was the equivalent of a white person saying it about a person of color in public. And certainly growing up, when my high school was 40% Black, 40% white, 50% Asian, 5% Hispanic and Puerto Rican and other.
Right.
And so we were everyone was just talking about race. It was just a normal thing to talk about. It's not that we would talk about race like, what do you think about this as a Black man? It would just come up, you know. We didn't think twice about it. Now, but if a white person gets called racist, I believe that will stick possibly for the rest of their life. It could end their career, even if it's not true. And so for me to talk about race, I can talk about it kind of in a meta way as I'm doing right now. And that's kind of okay. But I think most white people, I could be wrong, but I think we get that if we don't talk about it, we won't get accused of saying the wrong thing because we haven't said anything. But if we do talk about it, there's a lot of people out there who look for the worst interpretation of what you've said and will say, so-and-so said this. And so I think, but except that there are a few narratives that white people can say, and they will not be accused of racism. And so there's it seems to me that there's a lot of things that are said very similar that from white people. But I don't think that I hear people sharing openly their personal story. They may be honest, but I don't think they're candid. And I don't feel that. Now, that said, I'm not either because I'm scared too. You've listened to my podcast. You've heard me talking about the people throwing the bottles at me and stuff. And so I'm talking more about it and I'm stepping into it because I think it's very important. And also that my experience of having been the victim of so many crimes growing up and still today, that either my story is unique and therefore ought to be heard, or it's not unique, in which case a lot of people's stories should be heard. Or people just think that whatever has happened to me is not really that meaningful, in which case, what does it take? I mean,
let me say this. You're right in what you're saying as far as if a white person says something, and you and I, we've had this conversation, but we've always had it before we started taping, which is most unfortunate because I think that, and you and I both said this, those conversations that we have when we're not taping, we cover a lot and we say a lot. And I wish that we had taped a lot of that stuff. So now I think what we're doing, that's the reason why when I started this off, I just wanted to delve into it, listen to what you had to say. And then, from that, extrapolate a conversation or to shape the conversation as to what we're doing right now with this, with the podcast or Zoom. So you started off talking about the cops, and then listening to what you're saying, I introduced the whole concept as to what Blacks are feeling and whatnot. So now we're on the race topic. We're able to get to it. So now that we're on it, let's go a little farther. So as far as race, being able to say race, you're right. Depending on what you say about race, it could possibly end your career depending on who you are, you look at the people that are out there now, us celebrities, who are coming back and they're apologizing for things they have said or done in the past that 10 years ago, people would have just like brushed off. I think Ryan Reynolds and his wife, they're now apologizing for having been married on a plantation. Now, at the time they did it 7 years ago, it was like, wow, that's a cool thing. Now they're looking at it and they're saying, oh, I apologize. But why apologize? It's not affecting me. It was on a plantation. You thought it was beautiful. Okay, what's the big deal? But there are people that are out there that are saying, no, that was wrong. And you should have known better. Right now, I'm on the Jersey Shore, in a beach house from a friend of mine that I've known for 25 plus years. And she and I are having these conversations. I consider her a very dear friend. She's white. And this whole thing with Black Lives Matter, all these things are coming up. And we've been talking about it and having an honest conversation. And the whole thing with privilege, now I think that's like the new term that's being used, that if you're white, you're privileged. So she and I were talking about it. And she said, well, I don't consider myself as being privileged. She's like, everything that I have, I had to work for. I didn't come from a rich family, maybe a middle-class family, but we didn't have some of the things that other people have. And she said, when I got married, my husband and I completely, we were poor. We had to save and work. Bought our first home in our 40s, she said. And she said, later on, she said, he died, so I was able to get things, material things, insurance policies. Her parents died, so she was able to get, money from that. She said, but this just didn't happen, out of the blue. So I don't consider myself privileged. I'm like, I understand what you're saying. But to the rest of the world now, those individuals that are pushing this whole race conversation, they will look at her and say, but there's one thing you have that we don't have. So what is that? You're white. Like, huh? What? So that's going to make me a racist? The fact that she's white, there's a narrative or a push in society to say that she is privileged, because no matter what, if she were to lose everything today, she would still have her white skin. That would help her. And then one of the things I pointed out to her, she said that the vacation home that she has now, that she got when her parents died, I said, what Black people are looking at, and then some seemingly woke liberals are saying, now the time that her parents bought that vacation home back in the, I guess, 50s or early 60s, when they bought it, a Black person would not have been able to buy that same vacation home, even if they had the money, the job, the social standing and whatnot. They couldn't have done it because no one would have sold to them. She came back and she said, yeah, but in this area, it wasn't like that. If you had the money, they would have bought it. I'm like, but did any Blacks buy? No, they didn't. So there was a reason why they didn't buy. Same income. And even, let's say in the 60s, some of the Blacks might have had more income than her parents, might have been doctors. But still, they couldn't because of the color of their skin. They were looked at based upon the color of their skin, and not the fact that they have the money, they have the job, the social standing, the education or whatnot, but they couldn't buy mere fact that they were Black. Whereas her parents, they were white. Oh yeah, you can buy them. You can buy it. Now, someone can say, but if I were Jewish, they wouldn't let me buy it. Understood. But at the same time, you can look at a Jewish person and you probably couldn't tell if the person is Jewish because of the color of the skin. So there's where we are. That's where we are now in society with this whole dynamic of who's a racist, who's not a racist. I sincerely believe that Black people can be racist. When I was in high school, we were taught, I was taking sociology, psychology, that you can't be, a Black person cannot be a racist because they don't control anything of substance. White people do. So that in itself, was laying down the foundation that I don't care if Black people own or not. Look at Oprah Winfrey. She's a billionaire. Okay, she could, buy whatever she wants to buy. She has more money than, the average white person. So I would say she's privileged. But they would look at her and say, no, she's not privileged because she's not white. Yes, she has the money, but that money could be taken away from her. She's lucky maybe. But she's privileged enough that she can come out and she can make comments and accuse all of her previous followers and people that she built her success on as being a racist. And I think I sent you a link the other day, and some of these people are agreeing with her. I was thinking, wait a minute, time out. This one guy, I saw a video of this one guy, he happens to be white. He was saying, my first girlfriend was black. I thought I wasn't a racist. My first business partner was black. I thought I wasn't a racist. I am down with Black Lives Matter. I thought I wasn't a racist. I'm white. I'm a racist. Like, what? This makes absolutely no sense.
Yeah, it looks from in science, you have to be very careful not to make an experiment to prove the conclusion that you want.
Yeah.
And I don't know people's hearts and minds. I barely know my own. But a lot of what I see and hear seems consistent with, they know what they want. They know where they want to end up.
Yeah.
And they have to figure out how to get there. And I believe that the mind works that way. We tend to look for, we think we use reason to come to conclusions, but I think generally we have what we want, and we back rationalize. I think that's how the mind works.
Mm-hmm.
This is like from reading Jonathan Haidt and then following up and reading psychology
Right.
and stuff. And we think we justify things, but we often don't. And yeah, I mean, if I were to say I worked for everything I've got, like I ran a bunch of marathons, no one took any step for me. I wrote a PhD thesis, and that's not an easy thing to do. I think change anything of your typical identity things about me. Make me not white, make me not male. I think a lot of people are like, wow, that's amazing. But with me, I don't think that they think, well, of course, the system was designed for you to do that.
Right.
And it's not so, one, it's not so easy. Two, yeah, no one says, hey, Josh, did you struggle? No one. And also, I'm pretty sure that future generations will look back at this period and be like, the way we look back at Victorians. Although I think in my lifetime, I think now probably people look back at the Victorian age with all this prudery and stuff and be like, that made sense. Maybe we should be like that. But yeah, there are certain contexts where power is held back. Okay, if white, let's just adopt this argument that if whites have power, then blacks can't be racist to whites.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there are places where blacks have power. Africa, I think there are lots of places where whites are the minority. There's certainly communities in the United States. Can whites not be racist there? If I go in, there are neighborhoods where I feel scared. I feel I'm without power. I mean, when I was a kid, growing up, when the kids put the firecracker in my pocket, they were not worried about getting punished for it. Is that can a white be, or I mean, what about in the middle of China? Could I be not racist? Would it be impossible for me to be racist there? I really don't know the answer. I'm not saying like, I'm not trying to say like, look, checkmate, you're wrong.
And everything that you're saying makes perfectly good sense. And I have, had the same conversation with other individuals. And again, what they're looking at is collectively as a whole, the individuals that control the most in society, control the world. Yes, there is Africa, and you have dark-skinned people who are there, but do they control a lot? In China, homogeneous society. In Japan, they're, definitely you want to go there, you're the minority, but still, what they're looking at is that the white race man still controls everything that goes on, because they can all get together and say, okay.
So let's say in some future time, whites don't have the power. Then could whites not be racist?
No, that's a good point. No, I don't know the answer. That's a good point. And I have heard that before. And my response would be, you and I will probably be dead when that does happen.
Oh yeah.
But right now, it's political, and it garners attention, and it gets you power to say
power.
Right.
Yeah, it's
definitely right. Because and I always go to always look back at, a few years ago, 8, 9, 10, 12 years ago, we had the first Black president, elected in 2008. He didn't serve for 1, but for 2 terms. And we were told that if we elect him, first there was a side that said he won't be elected because it's a racist country. And then there were some who said, if he's elected, we've proven that we have changed. We've come a long way. So he was elected not once, but twice. So what happened to we've come a long way? Everything sort of changed to it's still a racist country. It's racist. And if it is a racist country, and if we're trying to get rid of it, why in the heck are we pushing to allow illegal aliens to come here and submit themselves to this horrible oppression of racism? If it is such a racist country and a racist place to be, and if we can't get it right, why do we want more people to come here and encounter this oppression?
Yeah,
No one can answer that. And the dialogue, if you were to put that out there to the folks that are talking about it, if you were to do it, they would say, you're a racist, just forget about it. If I were to do it, they would dismiss me and say, I'm an Uncle Tom and you don't have anything to say, because they want to push the narrative. When Barack Obama was elected president, it should have been resolved that all these white people that are racist, they elected a black man, not once, but twice. What happened? So, it begs a question as to, who's lying to us, and are you guys just making this stuff up? And when you have people who are uninformed and they're listening to one side of the argument, and I gotta say, although I like President Trump, okay, he doesn't help the situation, because he does, it's like sometimes people see him as straddling the fence, but he does come out, he does say, which no other Republican has said, I am not a racist, and look at what I've done. And his actions speak louder than his words. But yet still, they'll say, well, look at what he said about, what is the guy's name who just died? Oh gosh, name escapes me, I can't believe it. The civil rights icon, John Lewis. He didn't attend the funeral. Okay, so of course people will see that, especially black people will say, he's a racist. Well, he did provide commentary on it, and had he gone, he wouldn't have been received, and they didn't want him there anyway. So you made it easy for your narrative.
Well, he could have found a way to be welcomed.
He could have what?
He could have found it. If he just blundered in, yeah, they wouldn't like it. But he could say things there are things he could have done to make himself welcome.
I don't think so. I don't think so, because in every civil rights person that's died, when the president or a person of the opposing party has attended, they were always met negatively. When Bush attended the funeral of Martin Luther King's wife, people were grumbling. Why did he go? We didn't want him there. So they clearly made it a point. Karen Bass from California, a representative, who said, shut your mouth, President Trump. We don't want you here. So because of things that are so heightened.
He couldn't go if he behaved like he normally does. He would have to behave very differently. It's just within the realm of possibility.
Well, but when you say he would have to behave differently, well, how do you think he would have behaved? Do you think he would have gone there guns blazing? I mean, so again, we're putting on conditions. He's got to do this, he's got to do that. But a person has died. I'm not saying he has
to. I'm just saying
right.
It's possible.
But a person has died, and you would think that the country would come together. And even at his funeral, it was political. So had he gone, it would have been a complete fiasco. So it was best for him not to go. He said what he had to say, and that was it. The same thing with John McCain.
I bet that if someone could snap their finger, if there's a genie and could put me into Trump's body for a week, I'm not sure, but I bet I could find a way to say things and do things that people would say, wow, I never would have thought Trump would. I'd welcome Trump here, but I welcome Trump here.
Well, here's the thing. I hear what you're saying, but the narrative is we have to keep him as being a mean person. What you just said, it does happen behind the scenes. If you were to go up to any of the politicians, black or white, and say, well, when you met with him, how was he? My God, he was the most gracious person. I didn't know he could behave that way. He's this, he's that. So they say this all the time, that the Trump that you see when he's being tough as nails and saying, hey, this is what I've got to do because you're not going to run over me. But when one-on-one with him, he listens, and he does it all the time. I mean, this is a president who says, okay, I want to listen to Nancy Pelosi. I want to listen to Chuck Schumer. He's including these people in. But when they come out, they'll, oh, he was throwing a temper tantrum. He was doing this, he was doing that. It's like, but other people come out and say, no, he wasn't doing it. So it's part of their narrative because they have to make him look bad. So, but I don't want to deviate on him. I was just saying, as a whole, when you look at this stuff, it is for political gain, and people are able to make money because if and gain power. Because if they were to say, no, it is not like this, it's not like that at all. And all this racism that we're saying exists, you yourself look at it. We did elect a Black president for 2 terms. We had 2 Black attorney generals, and there are Blacks in different positions in society that you would have never thought a Black person would be in. We have Black senators. People will say, well, but we only have like, I think 3 Black senators. One is a Republican, then you have 2 Democrats. Well, why don't we have more? Well, let's look at the logic here. It's a lot difficult to run a Senate campaign than it is to run a representative campaign. And you've got to build up capital, and you've got to establish contacts. Maybe Blacks see that it's easier if I become a representative as opposed to a senator, but no one is keeping me from being a senator. But then the narrative is that, oh, you don't want Black senators. You don't want them. Well, they haven't been out there running. They haven't established themselves to run. But when you're always look at things based upon a racism prism, you're going to always say, well, they can't do it because of racism. Racism is stopping them. And that's just not the case. I remember when I was talking to my friend here, I said, I look back at my life, and I can't point to anything per se that was like I was discriminated against because of my color, because of this. But if I were to sit down and think about the experiences that I've had, I could possibly say, maybe this happened to me because I was Black. Maybe they looked at me because I was Black, or maybe they said this, because there's that heightened sense or that heightened narrative out there that if something doesn't go right or for Black people, it's because of racism. And having to have that burden on everything that you do, from stopped by a police officer, oh, they stopped me because I'm Black. They go to a grocery store and the checkout person is white, and she says, oh, I'm going to check that person out because she didn't see me, but then I'm going to assume, oh, she did it because of racism. Or this person didn't say hi because I was Black. I don't know if that is true. And a lot of people can't necessarily say this is true, but that's how they felt. But if you were to ask that person, the white person, why didn't you speak to me? Why didn't you say this? Well, you and we met. I went up to you and I said, hey, would you like to do this? And you said, well, send me this. Now, I could have said, oh, he didn't want me to exchange numbers because he's racist. But he said, hey, just send him an email, and he probably won't even answer. I didn't think that, but someone else
would have paper.
right. Someone else could have looked at it and said, oh, he doesn't want it because I'm a Black person. He's a racist. He was talking to the Asian girl and the Asian guy, and then the other white guy, but he didn't talk to me because I was a racist. Now that I think about it, no, I'll mention this to you when we're done taping. I just thought of something.
Okay.
You'll probably laugh about it. Okay, so I personally think that Black people can be racist, if you want to use that term, and not just white people, simply because, well, they control a lot in society. They have the power. Black people don't have the power. But I do think that it is a way of making money, getting attention, and obtaining power on the political stage. And I think that a lot of Black people, like Oprah Winfrey and politicians, are doing it because they're going to get attention. And if they don't say anything, if they remain mum and say, oh, well, I don't want to get in this, they will be attacked and say, oh, why aren't you saying anything? Why aren't you speaking up? Oprah Winfrey, why aren't you speaking up? You own all this, you have all this money. You are a Black woman, and we watched your show. Why aren't you saying anything? Then we're going to stop watching your show. And it could damage the brand that's struggling right now. So she has to come out and with this, having a conversation about being Black, and she puts it on Twitter, but she makes certain that no one can respond. So she turns off the feed, so you can't respond and refute what she's saying. You just have to listen to her. So it's how do you feel with all this going on, being a white man, a white male?
How do I feel? I mean,
do you think you're privileged?
Well, I've only heard the word. I haven't really kept track of this really tightly, but
no,
when I
Josh,
hear the word privilege,
no, Josh, no. If I ask you, do you think you're privileged?
Oh, man. go to the dictionary and tell me how many definitions there are for the word privilege.
I never thought about
Because
the
there's going
word.
to be a lot of it. And
Yeah.
that's not like I can just answer that question.
Uh-huh.
It's,
Okay,
I
I'll
mean, I
take it
could
away.
certainly,
I'll take it away. Being white, do you think you're afforded advantages or opportunities that a black person isn't?
yeah,
Hmm.
definitely. There's going to be situations where I have, things are going to work out for me that aren't going to work out for others. Sometimes because I'm white, sometimes because I'm male.
Well, but I'm not asking
Um,
you about others. I'm a black person.
oh, so yeah, there are going to be
Okay.
cases where um, people are going to presume things about me that are going to benefit me. That if my skin color were, if I were black, then I think they would probably presume something that would not benefit me.
And how do you feel about that?
I don't like it. I mean,
Hmm.
I don't want to have unfair advantages.
Right.
I don't want anyone to have unfair advantages. I mean,
Hmm.
there's some things, I mean, someone can look at my name and presume that probably I have more upper body strength than someone named Jill. Is that an advantage? I don't know. I mean, definitely, um, it's nice to be stronger on average. I'm probably stronger upper body strength than most women.
Hmm.
That's kind of nice to have. But there's lots of things that I don't know. Maybe it'd be interesting to give birth to a baby. I don't really want to, but it sounds kind of interesting.
No, it doesn't.
But I'm not going to do that anytime soon.
Right.
So that's a biological something that they have that I don't.
Right. That's biological, but race-wise.
Yeah. So this is, so culturally speaking, I mean, I've certainly been in situations where, oh man, I just posted this thing on Reddit and some guy writes back about my podcast. And the guy writes back, is like, do we need another white guy making a podcast? I'm like, what, what does
As
that have to,
opposed, as
that,
opposed to a black guy making a podcast.
so I wrote back and said, I don't understand what you mean. And so then he responded, I guess it looked to me like this person, whoever it is, then looked at a bunch of my, I post a lot of references to my podcast.
Uh-huh.
And so the person responds with, all you're doing is posting references to your podcast. Where's the diversity? You're just trying to promote yourself. Now, I certainly am trying to promote my podcast,
Right.
but I mean, the podcast there's a mission there and I'm trying to promote the mission,
Right.
sustainability and so forth. But he won't, or he, I presume it's a he, but I have no idea if it's a he. This person is not answering the question of what does it matter that the white and the maleness. Now,
Right.
if I were not white and male and someone referred to me in this way, oh, what another black woman with a podcast, I think that would be viewed as racist and sexist.
Right. And if I could just interject something, and if you try to defend what you're saying right now, they would say, no, why do you assume that the person is a he and not a she? Because the way I would look at it is that because in society, whenever we're speaking in terms, gender terms, we always say he this or he that. Well, why not say she? So it's like, well,
I would definitely prefer a gender neutral pronoun.
oh, God.
Other languages have it, and we don't. Because Ms.,
It's,
when I was a kid growing up, there's Miss and Mrs. and then became Ms. And I thought that's a useful term.
well, why do we have to be like other languages? Why can't we just be ourselves? It has worked so long, but now you have people who are mad and, oh, well, don't call me a he or she, just call me what, an it?
Oh, I don't like that. Well,
Or they or them?
Yeah, I certainly don't like compelling people to speak a certain way, but languages evolve.
No, and now, well, now language is being attacked because they're saying the language was created by the white man as to why things should be the proper term, and it shouldn't be that way.
I haven't heard that one yet.
Yeah,
so I'll look out for that one.
Yeah, I saw that 2 days ago on I think it was CNN. Guy spoke and said that language is very it's racist because we're following the language, as they say, the Queen's language from England, and it shouldn't be that way. So I don't. There is no winning in the society, and that is the reason why a lot of people like me feel that.
Well, if you play their
yes.
game, but you don't have to play. We don't have to play that game.
We don't have to play that game, but it seems as though there is a push to play that game.
Well, yeah. To me, it seems like, okay, from the perspective of oversimplifying things, a woke person, there are definitely places where there's a system of, say, the financial system, probably a lot of white men involved there.
Yep.
Historically, it's been that way. Was it intended to be that way? I'm not sure. But people who are not white men, it's going to be harder for them to get into that system. I would agree with that.
Right.
And if there's a lot of money there, that means there's going to be a lot of economic power and financial power that is not available to white men. Now, was it intended to be that way?
Wait, you said that is available to white men, but not black men.
That's more available to white men.
Right. You said that's not available to white men.
Oh, sorry. That's
available to white men, but not black men.
Yeah.
Okay.
And anyone who's not white, anyone who's not male, they're going to have a harder time getting in there.
Right.
Now I forgot what I was going to say.
Sorry about that.
If
we're talking about gender neutral pronouns and people going into places with power.
Yeah, I forgot what I was going to say. Well, there's something you said earlier that was
you said it would be easier.
So there are niches in the world where some white men have advantages.
Yep.
There are also niches where others have advantages.
Yep.
And
sports. Look at professional athletes. Majority of them are black. Well, that's not to say that there aren't white athletes also. Look at football. Look at basketball. Baseball, you have Hispanics and you have whites. But who's griping about that?
Yeah, that's worth going into. I want to table that one if that's okay.
Sure.
There are going to be places where others have advantages, and if we don't recognize that others have advantages in certain cases, then it really looks like it's just white bad, non-white good, male bad, non-male good.
Uh-huh.
And I don't think that in their hearts they believe that, although it's possible.
Mm-hmm.
And there's certainly situations where I'm disadvantaged. And it's felt to me like macro or microaggression when the person said, we don't need another white male podcaster. I think he mentioned something about a beard too. We have to recognize, I believe it's important to recognize is there are cases where I'm going to be at a disadvantage relative to others. There's this video I just saw, what was it? There's a video of some guy standing with a sign that said all lives matter in the deep South, I think, and there are all these cars going by and they're like saying all this racist stuff. I don't know what fraction of the cars were saying the racist stuff or not. And I thought, and then the same guy, and then the article that pointed to that also said this guy did another video of like a woman walking around New York City. This was like a few years ago, and all these guys are going up and be like, "Hey, pretty, hey, gorgeous," or whatever, bothering her. And I think it would be annoying to be an attractive woman walking by herself around in New York. Probably you're going to get approached a lot in ways that you don't want.
I'm an attractive guy and I get approached a lot also. What's the big deal?
I don't get approached. Maybe I'm not as attractive as I think I am. But I'm pretty sure that there are places in the world, in this country, in this city, where I could walk around, and if there was someone in front of me with a camera on me, then I gotta say all the preface stuff. I'm not, I don't know all the things I gotta preface and say what I'm not saying.
Well, don't say it. Just say it. Just say what you want. See, that's the thing. Because
see, if I say it without first preface, I have to preface. Yeah, that's it. Well, when I'm talking about race, I have to preface that yes, I have advantages. Yes, there are all these issues and all these things I'm working for and so forth. Because if I don't say that, then people will immediately say, "You don't blah 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 blah."
Right.
And so I have to say that yes, I understand, but I don't fully understand. Because
so am I privileged because I don't have to preface it with all that stuff?
Would I call it privilege? I mean, not in the sense that most people call privilege, but you certainly don't have to worry. There's something that you don't have to worry about that I do have to worry about.
Yeah, but I would say that I am privileged because of my black skin. I can say certain things. I don't have to preface it with anything. I don't have to.
This is one of the things where I can't say that.
Right. Well, right.
You're asking me a question that if I answer it, I'm opening myself up to blindsided cancellation. For me to answer that question.
Okay, so I'm going to say it. I'm going to say it for you. Right. I'm going to say it for you. I can say certain things because of my black skin that you cannot say because of your white skin. So
yeah,
I could say that.
Precise. I can say it, but the consequences to me.
Right. You can say anything. Right. You can say anything. You damn well please. but there are consequences to the things that you say. Whereas me being a black man, I can say it, and yes, there are consequences. Okay, but those consequences are different. I'll be called an Uncle Tom. They'll say, "Oh, we need to bring him around," and how is he saying this, and blah 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 blah. But for you, I mean, the consequences could be more severe, unfortunately. You know.
Yeah, and that's why that's the dialogue right now, or so when I've only heard the word privilege directed toward me as a way of silencing my voice.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, others may see it otherwise, but they haven't experienced what I've experienced. But that doesn't fly with them. There are cases where I'm powerless.
Yeah.
And academia is one where people would say that I'm more powerful, but that's not my experience, certainly not at NYU, which is 60-40 female to male. And almost most of the people, there's the guy who hired me and one or two other men, but mostly I've reported to women.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been at a power differential, not powerless, but they're the ones making the decisions affecting me.
Right.
And there've been a bunch of unilateral decisions that were really, I think if the genders were reversed, I'd have a case. I'm not sure.
Right.
And then, but the public dialogue of the cancellation world there's a very strong power that it's claimed to be about equality and rectifying inequalities, but it seems consistent with something different that is a little more, what you were saying, it's getting political power. I think well,
that's one of the things, is political power. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's something there that is not, I haven't really tried to define it or refine it, but I think that it's not what they claim. It's not exactly that far off, but it's a subtle nuance that makes it sound like it's about pro-equality, but it's consistent with white bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
Non-white good.
Yeah. Yep.
And until people come out and say, this white person is not just an ally, that implies that the white person is not on their own good,
right?
But only by virtue of their relationship to someone else do they have some value or something like that.
Right.
I don't have it nuanced enough. There's, and it's really, and they have to come out and say like this, like if they want to disagree with, they can't just call it's just to say Uncle Tom. It's too pat. But there's, yeah, this is the type of, okay. When we first started talking, those conversations we had earlier, you said you wish we recorded.
Right.
I could talk to you because I know it's not public and I don't have to worry about what someone will say or how someone will interpret what I have to say years from now. One of the things that I've been doing on my podcast and in my conversations with you, both recorded and unrecorded, is testing the waters and refining how to say things, because I have to say things really perfectly or else it's not going to, or else I'm like dipping into what I believe is sharing something that is important to be shared. And I just don't hear it coming out. And so I'm working on that. I'm trying, including this conversation.
Right. So you're trying to, when you say refine it, you're trying to make it so that people will accept what you're saying and they won't think that you're just another white guy out there trying to diminish the message that they're putting forth.
Or that I'm like ignorant and stupid and don't know what I'm talking about. I'm just so privileged that I'm like, that I, you know.
Right. And it shouldn't be that way, because no matter how you say it, you should be able to say it because it's coming from a genuine place of, this is how I see things. And I said the same thing to the host, my host here. I mean, we were having some really frank conversations about this whole thing. And I think that a lot of people, white and black, but definitely white, want to have that conversation because they don't see themselves as being privileged. Nor do they see themselves as being a racist.
Yeah, and then, but people will say, but you are, and sorry, you can't help it.
Exactly.
And they've constructed this, there's cracks in that, because it just doesn't, John Stuart Mill says you gotta have your ideas challenged, or else you don't really know what they are on liberty.
Right.
And I think that there's too much of it's not being challenged.
Right. It's too much of, you got to listen to what I'm saying. And if you don't get it, I'm sorry, but you're a racist. Josh, this was a great conversation.
Yeah.
Now, you said something toward the end that makes it that you're comfortable with this, that you were trying to craft what you were saying, or say it the right way. You were saying it to me, we were saying it when it wasn't recorded, now we're being recorded. This is going to be on YouTube and Twitter, Vimeo, and possibly Facebook. Are you comfortable with this conversation being put out there? And Parler also.
Well, now you make me want to go look at it again before saying yes.
I mean,
because I wasn't really trying. You have to at some point be yourself.
Right.
And yeah, it is sad that people, let's just say there's some hardcore racist out there.
Josh, you're not answering the question.
Well, okay. I would have said yes until you asked me, but now I say no because I didn't keep track of what I was saying. So now the answer is no. But I'd like to review it, and then.
As a reporter, you don't need to review it. I mean,
was there anything that you saw that you think?
Censor what I'm conversing. But
Oh, okay. I thought you were also saying like you have a chance to review it, but.
No, you don't have a chance to review it. I understand what you're saying, and see, that shouldn't be the case, because now you're like, well, what did I say in hindsight that could, adversely work against me? I was being truthful. I was saying things, but someone might pick up one little thing that I said and they say, "Ha, we caught him," and Rob didn't push him on it because he was just like right there with him. They're both the same. It shouldn't be that way at all. So I would say to our viewers and our watchers, if this goes up, if you are watching, definitely provide us with your commentary. Let us know what you think, because this is getting to the heart of it. This is the conversation that many people are saying we should have, but it's one-sided. It's always one person talking down or at the other person and telling them, you've got to see it my way, because if you don't, this is the result. You're racist, you're privileged, et cetera, et cetera. And that's not it. When you're having a conversation, it takes two people, and you have to learn to listen and learn. And you might not always agree on everything, but you have to agree to disagree and respect that. But somewhere out there, there is an equal landing that I think we can all get to if we only try and have an open dialogue. Would you agree, Josh?
Yeah, it's, I think that you and I, part of what we're sharing is this trying to figure out how to speak about this and open things up a bit. And we're just two people, but there's not a lot of people trying.
Right. They say that they are, but when you look at it, you really understand it. It's like everyone is coming to the table with an agenda that, which I think is wrong. So again, tune in next week. I'm going to try to get this up as soon as possible once I get Josh talking off the lead, make him comfortable. But again, this is Rob J. H1. You can follow me on Twitter, Parler, some of my writings on megamedia.org. I'm also on Periscope. Definitely tune into Periscope because I try to broadcast live at least twice a week. And also on Facebook, multiculturalconservativefoundation.com. And Josh, where can they find you?
JoshuaSpodek.com, and it's all there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. And we will see you again next time.